abstract, drawing, pencil, glaze, white, dark white, 7. Hello friends, welcome back. Thanks for joining me today. If you haven't seen what I'm doing so far, it's a painting of a fishing boat, coastal North Carolina, and dry dock. There's actually another boat in this shed and a boat here. I've moved this, I've scrunched things up, moved them around quite a bit. And I've just finished all of the acrylic layers. And hey Terrell, thank you very much, appreciate that. I was just counting a moment ago. Let me tell you how many layers, just so you can kind of get a handle on my world. Number 1, abstract swooshes. You can still see the yellow here, blue, red, completely marks that have nothing to do, had nothing to do. There's a red mark right there. Okay, so abstract. Number 2, drawing with longhand. I just tipped over my jar full of brushes. We'll ignore that for the moment. Then I did drawing with long-handled brushes. So number 1, abstract. 2, drawing. 3, drawing with pencils. 4, large colored glazes. 5, white highlights. 6, dark areas in acrylic. And 7, light highlights again. So there's 7 layers on here so far, and now this is all acrylic, so it's all dry. Now I'm switching to oil, and the magic formula, the magic bullet here is this stuff right here, Liquid Original. It's a medium, of course, made for oil paints, of course. But what they don't know, maybe they do, but what the Winsor Newton people that make liquid, what they don't advertise is that excuse me while I pick up some of my brushes. What they don't advertise is that the oil medium called liquid plays very well in a very friendly manner with water. So it's the perfect medium for switching from acrylic to oil. Okay, enough talking. Let's get painting. I'm looking now for a brush. Another brush like this. Here it is. Okay, just a word, because some of you occasionally have asked me about ventilation and so forth. I'm sure that I am not the poster child for adequate ventilation, but I think I'm reasonable. First of all, I'm using Gamsol, and it's my cleaner whenever I need to rinse out a brush. Gamsol is the healthiest, widely used. The liquid is kind of odoriferous, so I've got 2 things. Let me pick you up here real quick and show you my messy office. First of all, I've got a window air conditioning unit that is on. I've got a central air conditioning unit that is on. 3rd, I have a fan right over my head. And 4th, I have the door to the rest of the house open. So if I'm going to gas myself, I'm going to gas everybody in the house. Outside there is I'm upstairs in my house, and there's a large 2-story room. What's the word I'm looking for? No, not living room, but den. 2-story den. So it's a pretty big space. And all of that area down there is being circulated by a central air. So anyway, for me, that might not be good enough for you. I feel like it's good enough for me. Okay? So let's get going here. What colors do I go? First of all, again, my favorite brushes are the chip brushes. I'm picking up quite a bit of liquid. and I can glaze. And as I say there in my title, you might have seen it, one glaze, many colors. I'm always confused whether people understand that one glaze means it's all one layer of glaze, but it can be many colors. I'm going to start with, I hate to be in a rut, but I'm going to start with my most traditional, my most common, which is oxide red, which looks very, very, very brown on these brushes. But as soon as I spread it out on the canvas, it turns surprisingly orange. Now, if you don't have oxide red, first of all, get some. But it's similar to burnt sienna. So you don't have to wait to get some. Just go ahead and use your burnt sienna. It's very close to burnt sienna. And burnt sienna would do. So this is the point at which the smell of the liquid becomes the most intense, is during this glaze layer when I'm, as you can see, spreading it quite a bit. Now, again, if you're a student, if you want to try my technique, please understand this is definitely a glaze. Do not be applying a coat of paint to the painting. It should look like a piece of clear cellophane or clear, my music's too loud, hang on. I'll get in copyright trouble if I don't turn that down. It should be absolutely transparent. You don't lose, I'm not losing any. I guess I'm going to cover the entire canvas. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I'm not losing any detail. Nothing is obscured by this layer of, it's not translucent, this is transparent. Okay, isn't that pretty? Just even that right there. That is so pretty. Now, I'm going to, I do not want to dip these brushes in Gamsol and splash that all around. That would be overkill. I will clean these brushes at the end better. I might even go outside to do it. I'll clean these better at the end of the day, but I don't need to clean them right now. I'm just cleaning them just enough so I can continue to use them. All right. Now, I'm going to do what is my second most typical, or my most typical process, which is oxide red and then ultramarine blue. So warm and then cool, or cool and then warm. I go back and forth. Sometimes I do the blue first, the cool first, and then the warm. Or I think a little more often I do it this way. And what am I going to make blue? Well, the sky probably a little bit, but anything that I want cooler. That's all. Now understand that there's already brown, if you will, on this, right? Brown, orange. So when I just start doing blue on top of the brown, I'm mixing my colors right on the canvas. Does that make sense to you? These are not, I'm doing the mixing with my eyeballs right in front of you while I am, by looking at what's happening.
We'll make you a chicken salad sandwich downstairs.
Okay, about 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock maybe. Thanks. Thank you. 3 probably. Yeah, that's nice. Here, in a way, here's what you're aiming for. Again, I'm speaking of, so you're going to try this. Those of you who are trying this, what you want to aim for at the end of the glazing process, you want as many colors on the canvas, as many colors as possible, without getting all tying yourself in a knot. You want as many colors as possible to be at their final destination. Okay? I think that's where I haven't communicated that sometimes clearly enough with my students. Because it looks like everything I'm doing is just like a mess, but there's more going on evidently in my mind than sometimes than I let on. So there, I've just stated as clearly as I can. At the end of the oil process, you want as much, the whole painting if possible, you want as much of the painting as possible to be at its final color destination, and even value destination. So every layer that I've put down up until now has been leading me to this point. Right? If my last acrylic layer was wildly out of sync, wrong shade, wrong color, wrong value, wrong tone, so on, then then I, by the way, okay, so let me back up. How do you know when it's time to leave the acrylic layer and go on to the oil layer? How do you know when it's time? The answer is when the drawing is nearly close to correct. When the drawing is close to correct, when the colors are close to correct, and when the values are close to correct. That's when it's time. That's when you can go on to oil. Okay? So if I was close to correct at the end of the acrylic stage, how much closer to correct ought I to be at the end of this stage? And the answer is right much closer. Okay? So there you go. At the end of the oil stage, at the end of the glaze, the painting should be 80% finished, even though I have at least 4 more layers to go. I'll recite those for you in a minute, especially for anybody here that's a newcomer. Now, I'm going to bring in just a touch of phthalo blue. I hope that's a touch. We'll all find out together. Yep, that'll do. Yeah, that's nice. Now, I am not finished with this glaze yet. Not until, in just a minute, you'll see, I'm going to put down these brushes. I'm going to pick up a rag or two and lift out stuff, lift out details with a rag. A little bit of this phthalo blue up here. Okay, now let me ask one more thing. I usually, at this point also, if I'm going to do any vignette, any vignetting of the painting, which, yeah, this painting is not the exception, so I am going to darken the corners so that our eyes don't go flying off the corners. Very, very, very traditional. No, it's not a hard and fast rule. Not all paintings should be vignetted, but most, not all, but a good many. And this painting is not an exception to that rule. I don't want, non-artists wouldn't even look at these corners. Hey, Artist Ross, appreciate that, man. Yeah, if you missed earlier, I've done this scene at least twice before. But it's been, I think, 6 years. Since I did it. So I'm a much better artist, I think, than I was 6 years ago. So I'm doing it again. I've got 2 shows coming up this fall that this subject matter would be very appropriate for. So that's part of the reason why I realize right now that this wall of this shed, I bet you that's what it's called. Steel, corrugated steel shed. Needs to be darker. So I'm darkening that. Let me step back way across the room. Ooh, it's looking nice. And again, when an artist does that, it's an expression of surprise, unless he's an arrogant SOB, which I try not to be most of the time. That's not boasting. That's like, wow, this might actually turn out. How'd that happen? Okay. Oh, I'm not going to eat it until 3 o'clock. or so, probably. Well, that's only an hour. No, we can stay there for an hour. Okay, we're good. Thanks, Seth. Appreciate it. I have been brought lunch. What a treat. But I'm not going to eat for at least another hour yet. So I'm going to put a paper towel over my lunch. Forgive me for a minute while I take care of my needs. Okay. You just never know what you're going to get around here, do you? Lunchtime. By the way, if you didn't hear earlier, today is Hurricane Florence Day. In fact, I just got a emergency warning came up on my phone, warning of flash flooding. So, yeah, I'm indoors, happily indoors. Okay, now this is one of the funnest parts of the whole painting process, which is ragging out, lifting out, negative painting, anything that I want lighter. And usually, of course, I'm aiming to push the values. What is light, I'm making slightly lighter, usually. But doing that within the realm of the whole composition. So like I'm not going to go up here, up into a corner and make something a whole lot lighter necessarily. Okay? So I'm reinforcing the composition, not fighting against it. So what I'm doing right now has a little bit to do with similitude, accurately reflecting the photograph, the subject matter, has a little bit to do with that, has a lot to do with composition. Okay? If you may know, and again, if you watch me at the right times, when I keep going on the subject of composition, the composition has to do with the major light and dark zones, the major light and dark areas of a painting. Artist Ross, thank you so much for your kind comments. I appreciate it. Composition it's not about lines, it's about shapes, but shapes of what? Light and dark shapes. It's not primarily about color or texture. Composition, I'm trying to make a point here. Composition is about the major light and dark zones, areas, shapes, perhaps, of your painting. And the way this painting has evolved, and it did evolve, it's basically I've got a single diagonal shaft of light right down here. That's why, if you will, and let me show you the photograph again so you can see the contrast. Is that composition reflected? Is it reflected in the photograph? The answer is not at all. There is not a shaft of light. I mean, light here and some light here, but no. But in the painting, yes, there is. That's the difference. The main difference between a lousy photograph, and good painting is play of light. Okay, so that is layer number 8. I'm done. What next? At this point, I typically do one of 2 or 3 things. I used to do, at this point, either pencils or drawing with fine brushes. Dark detail. Draw dark details with brushes. And then I would do the fuzz layer and then the final edit layer. The final edit layer covers fewer inches than all the other layers, but it's the slowest and most meticulous of all the layers. So, but the fuzz layer has grown in importance and significance, has grown significantly, and kind of throws a little kink in the works. I'm thinking out loud here. Therefore, see, I could do the fuzz layer right now. No. I might do something today that I've never done. I'm just thinking. sure, what the heck, why not? Little experiment. Now, this throws a monkey wrench in my normal system, because if I'm plein air painting out on the street, I don't have the luxury of doing what I'm about to do. Let me tell you what I'm about to do. Again, this only works basically in studio painting. I'm going to do dark details in oil. Then I'm going to do dark details in pencil. And the transparent dark details in oil have a lot of liquid. It means it'll be fairly fast drying. And then I'm actually going to take a break, like an hour, hour and a half break in my painting process, so that when I come back to do the fuzz layer, most of my darks will be dry. Okay, so that's going to mean the end of this broadcast is going to come much later today. But I'll go get some other things done while I'm waiting for this to dry. Never done that before, but let's just do it. Okay. A couple things I've learned. I've done 3 classes in the last 3 weeks. 3 painting classes, so I'm very more alerted to the way students think than normal. Let me touch on again, looking at my photograph, looking at my subject matter. Let me touch on a subject matter. I rarely talk about it, so let's talk about it now. That is, what kind of brushes do you use? Many beginners of painting, they buy, as I did when I first started, branched into oil painting. And this was, for me, by the way, I was age 45, but I had been a full-time professional artist for decades. Fair enough. I just did everything but oil paint. That's all. So don't think I was a beginner. I was not a beginner. I was just a beginner oil painting. But I did make a lot of the classic mistakes of a beginner oil painter. I went out and bought all those nice synthetic, fake sable synthetic brushes. Why? Why did I like synthetics? The answer is simple. Because, so what am I talking about? I've got some here. I've got a worn out one here. Here's a bent up one. Watercolor brushes are synthetics brushes. Here's a really nice Winsor Newton Series 7 tiny thing. But why did I like synthetic, soft synthetic brushes? The answer is because they do what they're told. Because they are a control freak's friend. Most of you students need to be listening to me right now. Almost all of you, like me, are a recovering control freak. You say you want to get loose. Well, do you really? Well, then stop buying those soft sable or synthetic brushes and start buying bristle. One of the reasons I didn't like bristle brushes is like, ew, they have a little bit of a mind of their own. Of course, once you learn how to use them, even that gets diminished. But okay, so don't. So almost all my oil painting is done, almost the whole thing. My signature is usually the only thing that I use those sable brushes for. So first of all, bristle brushes, not sable, or synthetic sable. Number 2, I'll put it this way: flat brushes are okay as long as you don't use them on the flat. Let me find a flat brush here. Here's a synthetic. It's not a... Here we go. It's a long flat. This is a bristle brush, but it's flat. Perfectly good brush as long as you don't use it like that, which is the intuitive way to use it. Use it on the corners, and you spin it and twirl it and so forth, and occasionally drag it at an angle, but very rarely use it on the flat. So there you go. Round brushes are okay. Do I have a round brush in here? Round brushes are okay. I probably don't have one. Except that they create boring marks, because when you twirl them, it's round, so it's the same on every edge. Therefore, many artists that I know use largely filbert brushes. I mean, good grief. Rembrandt, I believe, did 100% of his painting with round brushes. I don't think they thought of anything but round brushes till, I don't know what century, 19th century or something. So, of course, good paintings. You can do good paintings with any shape of a brush. But I'm just trying to help you jump ahead and not waste too much time experimenting needlessly. Just go ahead and get on with it. Get your bristle filbert brushes, and my favorite brush company, if you can tell, is the Silver Grand Prix extra long filbert. 80% of my brushes, and all of I use cheap brushes. Here's a cheap one, Pro Stroke #3. Nothing wrong with cheap brushes. Let me repeat that. Nothing wrong, except they shed, they lose their hairs, but you deal with that. Nothing wrong with cheap brushes. Don't be a brush snob. Don't be any kind of snob, in my opinion. That was a scratch. There was too much of a scratch. Let me try. I like these. Of course, my favorite brushes in the world, as you may know, are these cheap chip brushes. And I like them partly because both ends are really useful. The back end, again, that's too much. Let me diminish what I just did a little bit there. There we go. Perfect. Okay, and I think I'm going to let you guys go here in a little while, because this particular stage of the painting process is going to be a little bit slow, and I don't need to bore you to tears watching me do stuff that some of which you can hardly even see me doing. I always try to post, by the way, in YouTube community, I always try to post the finished painting so you can see a nice still shot of it when I'm all done. Did you see how I'm twisting when I'm trying to create an organic weeds down here, organic random shapes? Yeah, do that. I don't even think about it. It's such a intuitive, subconscious thing that I do now that I don't even think about it. It just happens. Especially when I'm doing any kind of organic shapes. Okay, etc., etc., etc. I'll zoom in so you can, just for a few more minutes, and then I'm going to paint without you for a while. I know, that's mean of me. Most of the time, I really like your company. But I am essentially an introvert. So every once in a while, I like to be by myself. That is just lovely. And again, I always feel like I need to say, no, I'm not bragging. I'm going, dang, that's amazing. How did that happen? Let me take a minute while I'm on the subject, because I've just been teaching for 3 weeks. Good painting, in my opinion, the way I try to paint, is I am not arm wrestling with the tools, the brush, the paint, the canvas. I'm not forcing it into submission to my dominant will. That's not how it feels anyway. It's more like, no. I'm painting sort of in a mess. If it looks like I'm painting messy, then you're paying attention. Yeah, as I like to say to my students, don't look at me like that, because they're sitting there, oh yes, that's what I was going to do too. You were not. Okay. What I just did so rattled your cage, you're speechless, but you don't want to admit it, so you're sitting there looking smug like, yes, that's what I was going to do too. I'm playing, of course, with you and with my students, but I am not arm wrestling the tools, the mediums, into submission. Instead, I'm painting on the edge of control, just a little this side of control, or the other side. I'm not sure which way you're which way you're facing. And I'm trying to create an environment in which magic can happen. In other words, I'm not forcing the magic to happen. I'm trying to paint in a loose manner in which the magic can happen, but I don't feel like I'm causing it. Does that make sense? And so when things begin to turn out like this, and the things begin to take shape and the composition and so forth, you know, I'm at the front of the class being surprised. Like, oh, that's so cool. That is amazing. Look how that's turning out. Okay, does that make sense? So it's not an arrogant statement. It's like I'm as surprised as you are. That looks like a rock, you know, like a concrete wall, whatever that thing is called, breakwater, with a bunch of weeds up here and a bunch of broken rocks down here. Doesn't it look like that? Yeah. And yet I didn't force that to happen. I just created an environment in which accidents could happen. Okay. I think that's a good place for me to stop. If I remember, I'll bring you back in at the very end of this process. Hey, before I go, let me point out just a couple things. So you remember my very first marks that I made in this canvas were completely arbitrary, abstract colors. I want to show you how some of that stuff is showing up. Like right now I'm getting some really, really sweet stuff. See this red-orange up here? That's there not because I scratched my chin and said, by golly, I'll paint some red-orange up, and that'll look great up there in the peak of that. No. I didn't know the peak of the roof was going to be there. See all this little bits of red all in here? There's a stroke. There's all this stuff. A lot of that is from the early abstract stuff that and again, even up here at the top, this bright yellow in the background, and likewise it's almost all covered up, but you can still see a faint yellow streak right there. Those are those initial abstract. And I just want to point out to you, so why do I do those crazy abstract? Again, it's because I want to create an environment where magic like this can accidentally, quote unquote, accidentally happens. I don't feel like I created that, but by golly, I'm going to keep a lot of that stuff. Not only am I going to keep it, I'm actually going to reinforce it. I'm going to come back with little bits of orange and red paint on top of to really support that. In my opinion, that's what's beautiful about all good painting, and in this case, what's beautiful about my painting is the abstract accidents that happen accidentally. That's what's beautiful about my painting. The accidents, not the stuff. Now, all the stuff I'm doing on purpose. What really sets it apart is all the accidental things that are happening. Okay, I'm going to sign off for now. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back in a little while, and I've got just gave you a scorecard. After this, I'm going to draw in pencil wherever I feel like I want some scratchy lines. Then take a break, let this, what I'm doing right now, dry. Then I come back and do my fuzz layer. And if I need to do more pencil after that, I will. It's an optional. And then the final edit layer. So let me see, I was at 7 layers of acrylics, then the glaze, 8. This is layer number 9, pencils, 10, fuzz layer, 11, and final edit, 12. So and maybe an extra pencil. 12 or 13 layers on this painting when I'm done. 12 distinct phases. Each phase, I'm rambling still a little bit, each phase in and of itself is quite abstract. Each layer in and of itself quite abstract. But when they're all combined, they'll become quite representational, quite realistic.